Welcome to New England Lacrosse Journal's Chasing the Goal podcast, your destination for all things lacrosse. I'm your host, Kyle Devitte. Alongside me, you're not Jack.
I'm not Jack.
What is happening?
I'm not even Italian.
Well, you don't have to be because you are listening to the ISL show. And you know that because you already read the title of the podcast. But we have a Mike Z, who's also, he's the managing editor of the Seamans brands. Kind of has a hand in everything. He keeps me sane. He edits my stuff, which I don't know if anyone knows this. Writers can't edit their own things because they will miss so many things. I feel so bad for you because I have like 4 ticks that I can't see that you have to fix every time that are like, I always transpose form and from. Sometimes I mix up a tense and it's like in the weirdest spot and you're the only person that's ever edited me that finds it and I can't see it. And then he doesn't like an Oxford comma, which we can talk about later on in the podcast, but you know, that's AP style, right? You're an AP editor.
So basically you sweat blood producing content and I correct your spelling.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm a good speller, I think. I think it's more the context that needs a little help. So Mike's here. We actually just finished pressing our latest issue. We have Zavarian on the cover, which is a little ironic just because we already had the coach on and we've had them. They have 6 committed juniors. They're all on the cover. It's an incredible package that we all put together, and it's our prep preview for boys. And then we have all of that rolling out onto the site as well as the issue. You can go buy a physical copy on the website and subscribe and all those things. Mike, what else we got in there?
Yeah, I think when you look at it, I think the March-April issue we put out every year is one of my favorites, if not my favorite. It just gets everyone thinking about the upcoming seasons. It's our prep and high school preview issue, packed with features, power rankings, top 10 boys and girls prep capsules, stuff that has appeared on our website, will continue to appear on our website. A quick shout out that the girls coverage is really going to get ramped up starting next week. They're going to get a lot of time and space on the website previewing those seasons, and also the regular college features that we have. Chuck Jaffe's column, hanging out, all the staples of the New England Lacrosse Journal magazine. Yeah,
I also wrote a feature article on another Vermont goalie, which is actually kind of addressed in the article as to why we're doing it. Kind of have to when you're playing so well. I have a ton of stuff in there. We have stuff from Phil Shore, Dan Arestia. Definitely, if you get a chance, check it out. But right now, we're going to dive head first, hopefully into the deep end of the pool of the ISL. And I think we're going to start. Well, we talked about it before the show. I think the ISL is very much assembled into tiers this year. And I think my initial thought when I talked to coaches, I was like, do you think this is top heavy? Do you think it's kind of more balanced? And there's a lot of differing opinions, I will say, from the coaches. And my personal opinion was that it was very top heavy going in. And then looking through it and then reading some of the stuff that you wrote up about the previews of all the different teams and seeing the commits and seeing last year's records, this year's records, and then departed seniors, it really is 3 tiers, right?
Yeah, I think that's the number we arrived at. I think you have, and I think without identifying, the teams in that top tier, it's a very interesting top tier in that I don't think there's a far and away clear favorite or clear 2 favorites the way there's been in seasons past.
Yeah, I think listen, we cover a lot of the ISL. I get a lot of like, you got more ISL stuff on there this week. I'm like, yeah, that's because it's actually like a very intriguing league. And now, it's the second season of the playoff. We'll get to all that. But I think we're going to start kind of we don't want to call it the bottom tier. We'll probably call it the secondary tier, let's say. Okay? So teams that are kind of trying to come up from finishes last year where they're in the bottom half of the league.
Yeah, and let's put out a disclaimer too, is that we put together, this is preview coverage. There has not been a game played. There has not been a face-off yet. Coming at it from your perspective, Kyle, you've seen a lot of these players over the years on the summer circuit. You watch a lot of live lacrosse. You know a lot of these players. I come at it from a reporting angle. I talk to a lot of coaches. I glean information from them, try to see where the consensuses are and stuff like that. So it's what we're previewing is not necessarily what's about to happen. We like to think that we can be pretty accurate about this, but what we see on paper is a handful of teams that probably don't have the depth or the amount of commitments or maybe the history, to be considered challenges. They'll pick up their wins here and there. They'll put together stretches and play well, but overall they're probably not going to be as deep and consistent as they need to be to give the playoff chase a run.
Right. And I mean, listen, that's why they play the games. I think Sebs is actually playing today while we're recording.
Yeah, I think I saw that. They got a scrimmage going on in New Jersey, maybe.
Yeah,
Out
they're
of
on
the region,
a long
right?
road trip. I actually talked to Adam White before the podcast to get some background there. But before we get to them, let's start with St. Mark's.
Okay, yeah. I mean, this is, a lot of new coaches in the league, and Craig Farrar is not a first-year coach, but he's still a fairly new coach, and they want to be more competitive this year. They know that they're going to be giving up talent to a lot of the teams they play, but there's going to be some games that they're in that they're going to be, comparable and have a chance to win. So like I said, the season's all, in front of them.
Right.
And then another year of continuity with the coaching staff, and, they're looking to make an improvement.
Yeah, I think that's actually true for like a ton of teams in this kind of lower tier of the league. I mean, you look at what St. George's did last year, right? They kind of came out of nowhere. They punched Holderness in the mouth, beat Holderness,
Yep.
kind of sent that team not into a tailspin, but definitely had a couple come to church moments there with Coach Simon up in Holderness. But I think that the teams that there's always going to be one team that breaks out. And we were talking before, and we're not really sure who it's going to be. I don't even know talent wise, perspective wise, if I was going to pick one. I don't know if it would be one of these other teams down here, but what do you think of, let's say, Roxbury Latin? Because I think they kind of got floated by a couple of coaches like they could be pretty decent.
Yeah, I don't have Roxbury Latin in the bottom tier.
Oh, you don't?
No, I don't. I think when we published our preseason rankings last week, I believe, and they also appeared in the magazine, and I think Roxbury Latin was one of those non-top 10 teams, but it's a team I don't think you want to sleep on. Especially defensively and in goal, they're in very good position there.
Yep.
I just think it's another team that's got a coach in there for his second year, more systems in place. They know how he wants to do things. Mike Higgins, David Sullivan, terrific defender. John Thomas, terrific defender. Riley Stanton in goal. Will Anderson, another goalie. Back end, this could be a team that can be very stingy.
Right. Let's kind of go with the new coach theme a little bit. We got Brooks as a new coach, and what are we expecting from them? We actually just did an article on one of their best players, the midfielder for St. Lawrence, who's one of the best teams in Division III playing in college.
Just talking about Judge Murphy.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's a terrific season. And then just before we get into it, I just want to give a shout out to all the league coaches,
Yes.
who annually, take the time to give us this kind of insight. And 4 new coaches this year. One of which at Brooksy and Spiliotis, who we'll talk about, but they couldn't have been more forthcoming. Even if they didn't have the answers to everything we wanted, talking to people who could help provide the answers to give an outlook for the team, valuable information that we can use in the preseason. So it's a great bunch of guys, very helpful, and as always, we thank them for providing us the stuff to do the kind of job that we want to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Brooks, another team, not a single committed player. They've had some ones in the past, but they're a team that's also probably trying to rebuild and find their traction in a tough league. They'll have some games where they have a chance to win. They're going to have some games probably where they're going to be frankly overmatched.
Yeah. I think you can say that about a fair amount. Well, let's talk about a team that lost 2 of its kind of talismanic players in BB&N.
Yeah, right? that was a heck of a senior class. That was a senior class that really had an impact on that program going back to their freshman year and maybe even their 8th grade year. With some of those players, and you look at where they're playing now and playing at Duke and playing at Notre Dame, that's a heck of a graduating class. That's a lot of talent that they're going to have trouble trying to replace. Yeah,
we're actually going to talk about someone that was an 8th grader last year that actually played for one of the top teams. But I what I don't get. Here's what I don't get. I'm going to go on a little tangent right here. Why are 8th graders in Massachusetts allowed to play high school lacrosse? Because they definitely can't in New Hampshire. I asked. I coach in New Hampshire. You can't have an 8th grader. When was that? You need a waiver, right?
You need a waiver, but it does happen. In fact, the town I live in New Hampshire, actually elevated a couple 8th grade cross country runners to fill out a varsity team so they could have a scoring team. So yeah, in
Right.
situations,
You
especially
need
in
it.
smaller
Yeah.
schools,
You can if you need it.
you know,
Yeah.
probably not at Pinkerton Academy and
Right.
schools like that, but
Right.
it does happen.
Yeah, I think like schools like Stevens or some of those smaller schools up north, I'm sure that happens a lot. It's just an interesting kind of wrinkle when we're talking about prep schools, like the talent that's in let's just talk about ISL, the talent that's here, the fact that you can be an 8th grader and play. I mean, you're basically earmarked to be, if you stay on track, an excellent college player, because you're not going to face much better opposition in Massachusetts if you're playing a schedule in the ISL.
And you're probably not going to give away as many inches and pounds as you are as an 8th grader playing against those seniors as you will at any time in your career.
Yeah, it's wild. Not everybody was my size in 5th grade and never grew again, but I'm sure there's a couple. So let's kind of transition. Who else we got? We got anybody you want to highlight?
Well, I mean, you got to get another young team. You know, Groton could or could not be. Maybe that's maybe a middle tier team. They certainly have some players. They got a great face-off guy in Hugh Carlin. He's going to Colgate. Terrific defender, Luke Romano, going to Union. Another one of those
really good.
Yeah, another one of those Liberty
Very
League
good.
schools.
Yes.
We talked. That seems like a really good fit for a lot of these players. So, again, there's some talent there. Are they overall deep enough to get enough wins to make a run at a top 8 spot? We'll see.
Yeah. I think that's one of the things too to talk about when we're talking about all these teams is you can kind of assemble a top 5 just by, if you want it to be lazy, just by commits. But we don't do that. We talk to coaches. I watch tape. I kind of back up what I'm saying. And I watch the players in the summer that are, I mean, listen, most of the players on these teams are on club teams, right? Even if they're not, and if they're not, it's because they play hockey or they play another sport that's a primary sport. And that's one of the great things about the prep school ranks is like you're always getting a level of athleticism that if you can maintain it all the way down your roster, you're just going to be tougher to beat, right? And I think that's kind of the thing that always jumps out when I'm looking at all these lists and people have, this preview for this team, and here's where I think this team is, and it's a lot of it's based on the talent, but talent doesn't. That's one of the reasons it's hard to pick a front runner because there is a huge dispersal of talent, and it's really just the depth of things. Like last year, I think the story around the ISL was great goalies, great faceoff guys. One of the teams that has both of those is going to win. It's not what happened. Nobles didn't really have a faceoff guy. He got hurt early in the season. But they have a great goalie, and they had an amazing attackman with an incredible story in Chad Palumbo, and they won it all. You know?
And we sat here in this studio a year ago, and we did the ISL show last year, you, myself, and Jack. And, looking back at it, I think we had a fairly good handle about how the league was going to shake out. I don't think we saw Tabor doing what they did. That was maybe one team that was omitted that could have been included in our preview. But, I think we had a feel for it and who could contend, who were legit contenders. And this year feels a little different because I think there's more teams that are legitimately going to contend, and there's more teams that are going to legitimately contend for one of those top 8 playoff spots.
Right.
I think that's
kind of how you have to look at it, right? Is now we have a playoff. If you're in the top 8, you have a chance to win.
7th one last year, 8th one last year in the quarterfinals.
Yeah.
So
it's wild. It's one of the great things about the playoff system. Before we get to the next kind of tier, let's talk about Milton.
Yeah, I think Milton is in that next tier.
Okay.
I think we've arrived at the next
We're
tier.
transitioning to what did I say? Second tier? We'll go first tier and then championship tier. We'll do like the Premier League.
Second, first, and championship. Okay.
There you go.
So
That's how we'll do it.
This is the biggest tier. This is the one with the greatest surface area, the biggest footprint, I think.
Yes.
In the ISL. I think you've got probably 7 or 8 teams making up this tier that we don't have any of them on our short list to win the league.
Right.
But they're all considered playoff candidates, and it's, who stays healthy, who's playing well at the right time, who develops, who's better on May 10th than they were on March 23rd.
Right.
And that's what those teams should be looking at.
Yeah. I mean, we talk about teams that have great faceoff guys, great goalies. Willow Valley is a monster. I saw him when he was a freshman, and he was still this big. So it's actually insane that he's got that size, he's got that power, and he's still growing, and he's their main faceoff guy. And then you have Silas Hamblett, who's also a junior in goal. Both are uncommitted at this point. I don't know why. They should be going somewhere because they are excellent. They're probably just mulling a lot of options. Like those are, if you have those two things, that's the beginning of your spine of your team. And those two guys, can carry this team a pretty long way.
Yeah, I think that's a very intriguing team to watch. I think you look at their, I think talking to Mark Goodrich, he was talking about their young attack last year. I don't think they played a senior on attack for a minute, if I'm remembering a conversation right.
Right.
So Ralph Vogel was injured. Getting him back, huge addition. That's another great player. They got some good players. You like Mike Hanlon a lot. I remember you talking about him.
Coached him.
Yeah.
He's actually he's a great kid.
Yeah.
I love coaching kids that don't just look at you and say, what can I do better? That's who he is. I think, he's going to a NESCAC school. So, it's a great move from there. Who do we have next up? What do you think about Lawrence Academy?
Lawrence is another intriguing team because, again, a terrific graduating senior class with some big name players. They were a top 8 team last season. This year, I think more of a question mark. I think it's a question of, are those younger players going to step up and perform and fill those shoes and fill out the depth? So, yeah, I think we talked about Milton. I think Lawrence is probably, right alongside on that tier. What can they do? How high is their ceiling this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think their best players going to Skidmore, Cam McGinty.
Okay. Yep.
And he was honorable mention all league, had about 30 points in the ISL. So that's, it's not like the cupboard's bare. I think people look at that team and maybe underestimate them a little bit.
Yeah, and I think they're very high on their goalie too. Logan Reed, uncommitted,
yes.
But saw a lot of action last year. Did a good job. They got another committed player, Taylor Wersinski, along to committee. He's going to St. Mike's.
Yep.
So yeah, there are players, maybe not as familiar as we saw a year ago when they were heading into the season with some really big time commits. But yeah, there's players there.
That's a perfect example of a team that's a team, right? It's not necessarily it's greater than the sum of its parts. Yep. Let's go to Groton.
Did we touch on Groton?
A little bit, not enough. We kind of said
can never touch on Groton enough.
Luke Romano is amazing. He's going to Union, full on pipeline to Union from the ISL because of coach over there. They've got a couple other interesting guys. They actually have a really good short stick D mid.
Yep.
In Jack Travis.
Okay.
So that you don't really mention that much. Kids probably don't even like being called a short stick D-midi, but when you can own the role, you can do a lot for your team. A really good short stick D-midi is kind of worth their weight in gold, especially at the high school level where really no one wants to do it. It's really just offensive players that maybe can play defense most of the time. But he's actually exceptional, just denies the middle, rides guys down the alley really well. I've seen him play a couple times. Pretty impressive.
Okay.
And then, Hugh Carlin, I think who you touched on.
Shaping up could be one of the league's better face-off guys. So that's a huge asset to have. So I think it's a team that's definitely going to improve from last year's 4-10 overall record.
Yes. Yes.
Improve enough to make the playoff. We'll see.
Next up, Rivers.
Yes.
Let's talk about Rivers and new coach Matt Hudson. That program kind of not rebounding because they still have a ton of talent. Poirier is one of my favorite players. Just such an all-around midfielder going to Lafayette. I watched him play when he was a sophomore and he was playing like a senior, and now he is a senior, and it's time. Him, Anthony Stillwell, they're just doing great stuff.
Yeah, Poirier got some votes when we tossed out our coaches survey. Who's the most underrated player in the league? And his name popped up. Lafayette, not a big time, Power 5 Division I commitment, but he's going on to play Division I lacrosse, and they expect some big things from him this year at Rivers. Yeah,
that whole process is kind of a late ad for him. He's a Clams kid. I believe Stillwell is as well. Stillwell going to Hobart. Their connection when they play together is built on the club level and translates to Rivers.
Yep.
So that's going to be fun to watch.
Solid in goal too. Marcos Ramos.
Yes,
he had a nice freshman year. Had a nice freshman year for himself, and back as a sophomore. So that position's in pretty good hands.
They do have to kind of fill down low because they lost two of their main starters last year. But, you know, I mean, did you talk to Coach Hudson at all?
Yes, I did.
How did he seem to you in terms of like, I mean, you said all the guys were happy to share.
Yeah,
but
no, I think just eager for the challenge. You know, he inherits, like you said, some high-end players, a few of them, you know, not a ton of them. And I'm sure he'll use these weeks to go about trying to put his stamp on the program, getting players on the same page to do what he wants to do. And again, a team that we'll watch and see if they can improve from now until, you know, when the big games come around in May.
Let's go to, if I have to make a pick for my dark horse, it's Middlesex.
Okay.
And that's because they have Nick Moore, who is I always say favorite. I don't say best. I say favorite because I like how kids play means a lot to me when I watch them. And this kid rides, runs, hammers the ball, plays with his head up, great size. Like he's going to be excellent for them. I think that's going to be a huge addition. I mean, they're always well coached on defense, I think, which really helps. But what was your take from this?
My take, you know, talking to Doug, is early in the season, the defense is ahead of the offense. There's more known quantities back there, and you mentioned more Charlie Height, Matarese, going to Lafayette. They do have some experienced players back there. They'll have a new goalie or goalies, depending on who ends up, you know, winning the job. They graduated a good one. Face-offs, Graham Ray, Bates.
Yep.
Kid. Okay. So it could be in pretty good hands there. And then a lot of coaches went out of their way to mention Jacob Thibodeau, junior attackman, as a real strong player, maybe even a little overlooked, who could really kind of drive the narrative for Middlesex this year.
He's like an explosive guy. Like he's a guy that can just get around one guy and then the slide comes and he still makes a play. And that's the kind of, like, there are guys on teams like that all across the league. But when you kind of pair that with, as we said before, Nick Moore, you know, they have a guy that can run all day in John McKinnon, who's going to Hamilton, and Ty Sampson, who's coming in as well. It's a scary team. I mean, they're kind of, I feel like they're in this middle kind of tier, or first tier, we should say, just because of how last year kind of went. But this is a team. This is my pick for a team that I think is going to surprise people and really pull off some good wins.
All right.
All right, class, it's the NCAA Division I Women's Lacrosse Championship. Welcome to Fandom 101. Want to give your team the ultimate assist on the lax field? Here's your assignment. Lesson 1, get loud for every goal. 2, work in groups. And 3, attendance is encouraged, but passion is mandatory. The Division I Women's Lacrosse Championship, May 26th and 28th at Wake Med Soccer Park in Cary, North Carolina. Buy your tickets today at ncaa.com/WLacrosse. Class dismissed.
Dedication, skills, focus, and the drive to play at the highest level. Laxachusetts is committed to providing the coaching and curriculum that will allow boys and girls to learn and grow as individuals and as teammates. With an emphasis on skill development and academic excellence, their players have led the country in college recruiting for the past 10 years. With over 800 plus players moving on to play in college and over 130 plus high school All-Americans, Laxachusetts has been able to set the nationwide standard unmatched in the sport of lacrosse. To learn more, log on to laxachusetts.com. That's laxachusetts.com.
All right, class, it's the NCAA Men's Lacrosse Championships. Welcome to Fandom 101. Want to hype up your squad from face-off to the final whistle? Here's your assignment. Lesson 1, get loud for every goal. 2, work together. And 3, attendance is encouraged, but passion is mandatory. The Men's Lacrosse Championships, May 27th and 29th at Lincoln Financial Field in Philadelphia. Buy your tickets today at ncaa.com/mlacrosse. Class dismissed.
All right. It looks like we got a couple more teams in this.
Yes.
First
tier.
First tier.
That's how we're gonna do it. Tabor.
Tabor's one, and Tabor's a team I'm very interested to see play.
Yes.
Just to get my Tabor notes here.
I know we both love RJ Swift, who is now at NMH. He has departed, and they have a new coach. And I didn't get a chance to speak with him, but you did.
Yeah. Yeah, and the first thing I should probably do is apologize to him during the podcast for referring to him as Connor Gorman. In one of the stories I wrote, it's Connor Gordon. Won't make that mistake again, Coach.
It's okay.
Sincere apologies, but yeah, and he inherits a team that's got some talent. You know, and starts on attack with Evan O'Neill, the other O'Neill, 42 goals.
Not much of another. I'm gonna say not much of another.
Yeah, the younger O'Neill. So he's obviously a player that's going to keep defensive coordinators up late trying to figure out ways to slow him down.
Yeah, and they do have an excellent smattering of Poles as well. Brenton Sheffield is going to Penn. They have Logan Stiles.
Yep.
I think this is a team where if you can get a handle on what you want to be early, if you want to be a let's get it to Evan team, then you can have success there. If you want to be a transition team, you can have success there. If you want to be a team that kind of tries to control the tempo with a lot of possessions, you can be that too.
Okay.
So what? Any other thoughts on this squad?
No, I think it's one that's going to be fun to watch. It's a team that it didn't really come out of nowhere last year, but they had an excellent season.
Yes.
They won a lot of games, finished in second place. The O'Neill brothers, and that's a big graduation loss. Obviously, Aiden now at Richmond.
Yep.
But
had 1-1 in his first game.
Did you really?
First game.
Okay.
1-1. Yeah, it was pretty impressive.
All right.
Any other teams in this tier?
One last one,
Okay.
and I think it's a team we can both admit took us a little by surprise last year, and that's St. George's. The Dragons.
Yeah. Yes, the Dragons. Yes. Briefly touched on them. What are your thoughts on how they're shaping up?
I thought last year was a story of maybe a team with a new coach rode a very strong senior class to more wins than I think anybody around the league thought that they would get. They ended up winning 10 games last year.
Right.
And their critics are going to say, okay, well, they outclassed by Nobles in the first round of the playoffs and maybe no signature wins, but they beat some decent teams. They won a lot of games that they had a chance to win. And you look up at the end of it, and there's St. George's in 6th place, and I don't think they were on anybody's radar at the start.
Yeah. Jack Erdman his stats do not reflect his ability. I think he can go off and have a 40-point season.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Watching him play in the summer, his size, his ability to turn the corner, ability to sting a corner with a shot. I mean, he plays very heads up, very intelligent lacrosse. I think if that's your leader there, you're in a good spot. I think one of the things this team did last year to get to that spot was they beat up on a lot of the teams that maybe don't want to say beneath them, but some of the
games they could have won, they did win.
Yes, and then the teams, the games that they couldn't win, they put up a fight. And that's the kind of team that if you're looking through and being like, who's a surprise team, they could do it again. That's the crazy thing is they could do it again. It's just a matter of putting it all together.
Yeah, and a couple more names to mention, and one is Nick Barnes, a junior attackman, 26-goal sophomore year, has caught the attention of coaches. A couple of them mentioned him by name, and 2 Division I committed goalies. You got Austin Bordeaux at Quinnipiac, right? I believe that, and then Toad Didi, nice nickname,
nice,
going to Air Force. So that last line of defense is in pretty good shape.
Absolutely. Let's move up to the championship tier.
Yes. How should we preface this? I think this was...
Do you want to go alphabetical? Do we have it sorted by alphabetical? Can we do that so no one gets mad at us?
I think we'll just... why don't we count back from 5? I mean, and this has been posted on the website, so this is no secret. But this was a tough decision when we kicked it around a lot, and talked to people who were in the know and talked to coaches, and this is the pecking order we came up with that could literally be upside down by the end of the season. I
think I talked you into moving someone up from 5 to 4.
Very possible. That's what we do. We work together. Okay.
Yes.
There's no right answer. It's a team collaborative effort. Right. So it's almost insane to say this, but the team that we have ranked 5th at the top of seasons is a team that's been a contender for the last several years.
Yep.
And has a terrific looking team on paper, and that's St. Sebastian's.
Yes. Sebs in the house. Their head coach, Adam White, the architect, if you will, of the playoff system. I think one of the things, they're the separator because not just of how many commits they have, but their other talent is exceptional. And we talked earlier in the show about an 8th grader that got minutes last year. That's Teddy Frasoli. Yep. When you are an 8th grader and you are straight up putting up points as an 8th grader, you're basically the next year expected to be a little bit better. And if that's the case, he's going to really blow up.
Yeah, and that's one of the points, talking to Adam, he felt that going into this season was almost like an inverse of how they went into the season last year, where they were very experienced on defense. Had a terrific face-off guy. And this year, that experience is on offense. So this is a team that could, literally roll out of bed and start scoring a lot of goals.
I don't want to say this name wrong, but I will. Chris Maragius?
Could be
Mirages.
Mirages. Yep.
Nailed it. Going to Denver. I wrote a piece on him. He is an excellent adaptive attackman, so he can play kind of all three spots. He's not just X or wing or inside. He can kind of do everything, and that's the kind of guy you really have to be careful of when you play defense, because if you shut him down, that's fine. He'll just go inside, and he'll get a ball to the backside pipe and just score. I mean, he's kind of automatic inside 10 yards if he has a little bit of space. And I think that's one of the more intriguing guys on this roster. Of course, they lost Jack Rideout to graduation, went to Michigan. David Hom comes in. What did one of the coaches say anything about him to you?
Just that they think they're going to be in very good hands.
Yes. Let's see. Who else?
You talked about last year, the glut of goalies.
Yes.
It's not like the cupboard's bare when you look across the league. Ryan Williamson, Dartmouth commit. So that's certainly an asset for Sebs in goal.
It's this group of seniors, Williamson, Swarboss, Hoffman, and Will Trider. I mean, that's a good crew. I mean, two of those guys are attackmen. Swarboss is an all-around midfielder going to Villanova. Excellent player. I think when you look at Sebs, if you're looking not for like weakness or a weakness, you're looking for a way to make them play a little slower so you can kind of get more takes more on the net, get more possessions. And that's kind of how you have to beat them, because they're not a team that's going to beat themselves.
Okay.
That's kind of how I see them. Like, they're too well coached, too many guys. And this, they do reload seemingly with seniors and upperclassmen every year.
And eighth graders.
And apparently, well, he's a freshman now. We could say freshman. So I think, that's definitely why they're in the top 5, but they were 4, and we're going to say 4 now. 4 is Govs.
Yeah.
There's one reason I picked Govs.
I'm going to guess what that is.
Good, do it.
I think they're going to win a lot of faceoffs.
There you go. Owen Umansky, my guy. I love players that forge their own way. This is a guy who played for multiple club teams, committed to different schools, played at St. John's Prep as well, won an MIAA state title. A more seasoned faceoff guy you will never find. This kid is all over the place, playing against the best competition in the country when he's playing for Massachusetts. I mean, he's really just an excellent player. And then I think the other guy that I really liked is Pierce McDonald. Just able to get up and down the field. He plays kind of like a hooper. He's got that kind of like Euro step ability. He can feed off his back foot. He can get to the front foot. He can turn the corner again. He can beat a guy inside. Really excellent. He's going to Penn. So, I mean, kind of speaks for itself. If we're scaling out our commits, doesn't always translate, but I think in that kind of area it does.
Yeah, and we all know what Govs did last year, and they just started playing their best lacrosse at the best possible time. Upset Belmont Hill in the quarterfinals, upset Sebs in the semis to reach the championship game where they lost to Nobles, and they have a lot of players back from that team, and they've got a taste of it. They know what it's like to win big games. So yeah, they're definitely a top 5 and room to grow.
They have really good goalie in Andrew Almquist as well. This is a team that has experience all over. And I think that's kind of one of the other things that pushed them over the top for me. Like, yes, Sebs has more offensive commits if we're just looking at straight up talent and commits. But I think across the board, the spine, and I keep using that term, for me, like a spine of a team, when you build a team, especially for high school, is face-off, goalie, one scoring midfielder, one scoring attackman, and a shutdown defenseman. If you have all those things, you are a contender for whatever league you're in, whatever division you're in. That's where you go, So I think that's the argument for Govs at 4.
Good argument.
Yeah. Let's go to 3. This team has a new coach, new to a lot of people, but not to me. And that's Thayer, and the new coach is Bill Day. who I don't remember the last time I called him Bill Day. I call him BD. And pretty much every time I talk to him, as you know, old heads will remember, he was the former coach of the Boston Cannons in the MLL, which is kind of where I cut my teeth in the beginning of my career, and built a really good relationship. He's an excellent coach. He has been coaching off and on with Massachusetts as well. He coached with Kings a little bit earlier before he joined Massachusetts, but you know, he's not a guy that's unfamiliar to that sect, I think, of people, but maybe for other people look from the outside looking in, they're like, who is that? And I'm going to tell you, like, this is a guy who knows how to manage players. He knows how to manage minutes, and he knows how to get the best out of the guys on his team.
Yeah, and coaches in the league know him, and I know because conversations I had with other coaches, if Thayer would come up, but they'd inevitably say, you know, good hire, good coach. You know, a lot of respect for him and what he does, and he takes over a team that's got a lot of talented juniors and seniors.
It's almost too much. That's my hot take. Almost too much. Like, there's a lot of individual talent on this team. I think his biggest challenge is going to be getting everybody to play together to elevate, right? Because there's just so many midfielders, so many attackmen, so many guys that have roles already are on this team, and he's going to change a couple. I'm going to tell you right now, he's going to go in there, he's going to change some things, and some people aren't going to like it, but if everyone on this team buys in, that's why they're 3. I just think there's so much talent. They just need a little push, and I think he's the perfect guy to be that person.
And you talk about a team spine and how important that is. I mean, does team in the league have a better spine than Thayer?
I don't think so. I mean, Hanahan is excellent at the X. Connor Foley, again, I keep saying favorite. My favorite goalie.
Yeah.
Just because he's acrobatic. He made like a jumping karate kick save when I saw him last. Every time I see him, he does something where I'm like, how did you do that? You know, that's the kind of goalie that can change your fortunes, change your team, and push you to the next level.
Yeah.
Going to Brown, we should say.
Yeah, we polled the league's coaches, weeks ago. Who's your most impressive opposing player? 3 coaches named Connor Foley.
Yeah, because you think you have a goal. You're like right in front of him, and then he just does something crazy, like spider monkeys out, and you got to save.
Yeah.
Like that's one of the guys that you really have to look towards as one of the best players in the league. I think if we're looking at underrated guys on this team, Ty Schwinnard, I think might be better than his brother. Just a sophomore, but very dynamic, very dangerous. When I talked to coaches, they were like, I don't really want to play against him. I don't know what we're going to do to kind of mitigate what he's able to do. Yeah. So that's kind of one of the guys that I'm looking at. And then obviously, I mean, all these other guys.
Yeah,
I mean,
older brother Beauchenard, Holy Cross commit, so you're not talking.
Yeah, no, I'm not
liver here.
I'm not talking mess. I'm just saying, like, I had a coach be like, I think he's better.
Okay.
And he's 2 years younger.
That's high praise. Yeah.
And Schwinnard's, I mean, listen, the thing about him is his hands, right? Like, he's got really good hands. He's got a hammer. Like, he's not like the most physically imposing player I've ever seen, but you don't have to be. Like, if you're meat and potatoes just scoring goals, guess what? Everyone wants meat and potatoes every time you're up for a roster. So that's how you make your bones. Let me look through here. See if, I mean, Tucker Chanchuk, geez. This kid did a I wasn't there, but I saw the clip. He did a behind the back dodge with a long pole and scored with his offhand. I don't remember the last time I saw something like that. So that's an excellent player to bring up. And then right before we transition to the next team, Nate Austin Johnstone is, if there's a ball in the corner, okay, and there's 2 defensemen there, and there's 1 attackman, I want that attackman to be Nate Austin Johnstone, because he's going to get it. And he's going to blow past 2 guys, and all of a sudden you have a broken situation.
Yep.
Like, it's just the toughness and the ability to grit it out in situations that are like, a lot of attackmen don't go after 50-50 balls, man. Listen, I'm an attackman. I don't go after 50-50 balls. I'm too old. But guys, when you're playing, like, they have that grittiness, that sandpaper. That's him.
It's funny talking to him, after he and his teammate Chris Cabral both committed to Rutgers back in the fall. So I got them on the phone for a conversation to kind of highlight those decisions. And they just talk about the individual battles they go up against each other. Every day they want to compete against each other in just about anything they do.
Couldn't go to a better school for that, by the way.
Yeah.
Rutgers loves that.
Yeah.
They that's kind of their bread and butter.
That appealed
guys
to
like
them.
that. Yeah, 100%.
So I'm going to take the scenic route to number 2, if you would grant me a little bit, because I know my son listens to this sometimes. He is 13 years old and a complete soccer fanatic. Just fills every waking moment of his day. We watch Premier League all weekend long and enjoy it.
Yep.
He's been following Arsenal for several years, and we're getting the reward this year.
Finally.
Okay, top of the table. Got that, Brent? Okay, top of the table.
Yep.
That was the title of his art project, by the way.
Okay.
We're top of the table.
Nice.
Okay, so you go back to the studio after you watch Arsenal play, and the adjective that they use is grooved, meaning, the coach has his stamp on this team. They know exactly what they're supposed to do, and every time you watch them, they're grooved because they're doing the same thing. When I look at the Independent School League over the last several years, the team that is grooved is Belmont Hill.
100%.
Okay?
Yes.
And there's just a pattern there that, kids get their taste as freshmen or maybe sophomores, and then by the time they're juniors and seniors, they are driving the narrative, and they are taking on those key roles, and they are playing big roles for a team that is inevitably near the top of the standings.
Yes. And the good news, too, is that we get to see full Ben Wood this year, who's a defenseman. He's going to Georgetown, plays a little LSM as well. Just an imposing human. I mean, talk about like a guy that you just don't want to see when you line up, right? Like you don't want to see this guy across from you, much less stick on stick with you when you're playing. So I shout out to him. I think there's a lot of other guys. I think, one of the guys that was underrated, I don't know if he made the list when you talked to guys, but a couple guys mentioned Eli Goldstein to me as like wildly underrated somehow.
Okay.
Dartmouth commit, so you wouldn't think that. But I think he's one of the guys to look out for on offense.
Yeah, I think it's easy. I mean, because there's always such a strong class of seniors at Belmont Hill that it can be easy to get, maybe not lost in the shuffle, but maybe not, full in front of the camera.
Yeah.
The spotlight until you get to be, that senior, and your role is going to grow even more.
Yeah, I mean, we talked before we sat down to do the podcast. Like Bell Hill is run like a D1 team, for better or worse, like mostly better, because they're regimented. This is a team that is
grooved.
Yeah, grooved, regimented. Yeah, 100%. And that's the right adjective to use, because when you know what you're doing every day, you don't have to think. You just play. And I think there's something to be said for that. And also the way that this team plays, they are physical. They want you to, they lure you in and they attack you on defense. And on offense, they're banging the ball, getting a good shot, and it's very systematic. It's not a star-driven team. There are stars on it, but there isn't a lot of hero ball going on at Bell Hill, right? I mean, that's my perception of them when I watch them play.
Yeah, that's good. And I think especially defensively at the start of the year, they're very strong. I mean, Finn Fox in the junior class and Charlie Hazard and Matthew Torrey in goal as a Division I commit. So that part is good. And if they have kids that can step up and replace the lost scoring from last year, then this team's going to be fine.
Yeah. In just a few short weeks, the 2023 boys high school lacrosse season will be getting underway. Why not get a jump start on your season and attend the Interstate Preseason Training Day on Sunday, March 19th at Wheaton College. This event is open to all high school age players that are interested in tuning up their lacrosse skills before tryouts begin. The coaching staff for this event will feature local college and high school coaches that will work with players to improve their skills and get their game ready for the season. For more information and registration, go to piatellilacrosse.com.
Looking to keep up with all the latest news and information on New England lacrosse? New England Lacrosse Journal and laxjournal.com are the premier resources for information and inspiration on the New England lacrosse scene. Have every issue of New England Lacrosse Journal, the magazine, delivered to your home or office. And don't forget to stay in the game every day with a digital subscription to laxjournal.com to receive daily digital lacrosse coverage on club lacrosse, college commits, prep and high school, Division 1, 2, and 3 colleges, showcases, rankings, and much more. Get in the game and behind the scenes now by logging on to laxjournal.com. Just click on the subscribe button and start the subscription that is right for you today. New England Lacrosse Journal is a Seamans Media publication. Seamans Media. Inspiring, informative, insightful.
Do you want to go to one?
Well, there's only one left.
I know. And the coach didn't want to be one.
Nobody wants to be one.
No.
Somebody has to be one, and I think the rationale was that, this is the defending league champion. It's Nobles.
Yeah.
Okay. They won the first ever ISL championship tournament. They looked very good doing it. Scored a bunch of goals. Terrific offense. Terrific goaltending. And Matty Tully's just a terrific player. And they did this without having that dominant face-off guy that can mean so much to a team at this level.
Yeah.
This year they have one.
Yes. They also still have Brody Upton, which, dude, I watched Brody Upton play for 3D 2 years ago when he was a sophomore at Lake Placid. And he made a play that was so insane. I'm struggling to describe it. So he got the ball at midfield. They threw a pole at him. He beat the pole with like one step, just down the sideline, right? Another midi tried to chase him down. He slowed down to take the guy's check, took it in his back, and ran through, like used it as rocket fuel. Rocket fueled him right to the net, looked right at the wide open attackman, did not pass it, and buried it top corner opposite from that side with his right hand. Like, I know that sounds like, oh, that's just a cool play, but like the degree of difficulty to pull that off. And by the way, I love Lake Placid. Their fields are always like, this was like kind of at the end of the tournament. So the fields are like uneven. You could take a wrong step, but like the way that he moves, the confidence that he plays with, he didn't care. He went right at it and he came off, and Rowley was coaching that team. He was also his coach at Nobles and like kind of chewed him out for not passing to the attackman. But then like, I wasn't right next to it, but I was about 10 feet away, and I could tell like he smiled, right? Like you could see the smile a little bit, and it's like, how do you stop a guy that's just so confident, so big, so powerful with his movements?
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty tough.
It's a play that stays with you, though, if you can remember it in detail.
I mean, and for people that are listening that like are club coaches or kids, like I don't mean to single out guys necessarily every time I recall something, but if a player does something that is more than above average, is exceptional in a way that it sticks in my brain, I'm pretty much always going to remember it. And that was one of those times where like I saw this play and I was like, I'm never going to forget this. And listen, that might be, some people are like, well, why don't you write this guy up, this guy up, this guy up? I'm like, I didn't see him. Or if I saw them, they didn't do anything crazy. But if you do something crazy, you're getting written up. And I don't want to make that as a motivational tactic to like be like, do crazy things. Play hard, do the thing you're supposed to do. But, there are guys that just make plays that are above and beyond, And again, this team had one of those guys in Chad Palumbo last year. Not there anymore. I think if you're going to take a dig, you probably shouldn't. But if you're going to take a dig, right? They lost Palumbo. They lost Roman Toselli.
Yep.
Like
A lot of scoring.
Sure.
A lot back, but yeah, they did lose some.
The way that they play, now that they have a face-off guy.
Who we should probably mention, Christian Grosso.
Yeah,
right?
sorry.
Going to Virginia, that's a pretty
no joke.
Pretty good future there.
Definitely no joke there. As a junior, I think if you have more possessions, like giving this team more possessions is like giving yourself more poison. Like they're going to make the most out of their opportunities. They run a very wing-heavy shooting offense, I want to say. I know Rowley's going to get mad that I said that. But they get a lot of opportunities from that three-quarter spot, the 5-and-5. They have the ability to can that shot. And they got workhorses too. Bruno Batty, son of Rocky Batty.
Yep, going to play for him at Babson, right?
Goes back and forth.
Yep.
I remember seeing his commitment and I laughed because I knew it was his dad's school. But not because he's not good, because that's crazy that he's going there.
I think it's worth mentioning that the whole defense is basically back in a year more experience, and I know Rowley was very excited about that. And then to also add to the attack, Grayson McClements, you can't get through this podcast without naming or mentioning him. He was another player that 3 other ISL coaches classified as the most impressive player on an opposing team. So 3 votes for him, 3 votes for Connor Foley at Thayer. Those were the 2 guys that led the way.
Let's talk about their goaltender then. Matt Tully.
Yeah.
Matty Tully going to Cornell.
Yep.
A progeny of Piatelli Lacrosse, it should be said. Let's represent Jack when he's not here, even though he'd never do that for us. We'll throw him a shout out. Excellent hockey player as well. I mean, this guy makes, he plays like kind of a stand-up style where it's not so much him moving to the ball to make a stop. He's very stick dependent on his stops, which is very good for the D1 level. That's what D1 coaches look for, is guys that can make stops with the stick and control it. He's an excellent goalie in controlling and then also outletting immediately after he makes the save, which is how Nobles gets a ton of their points. I mean, this team will run you into the ground. If you try to run with them, you better have a deep bench. If you do not have a deep bench and you play Nobles, you might have a couple guys just out with cramps by the second quarter. Like, that's how hard they're going to run you up and down. And, you know, in their mind, they played a whole season and won a championship without a faceoff guy. The possessions in their mind are going to come.
Yeah, I think they check off all the boxes for a preseason number 1 team. You know, no matter that nobody wants to be named number 1. I think of, in a tight field that we kind of narrow down to 5 potential, you know, top teams, they're going to go into the season as the number 1 team.
All right, let's make predictions. This is my least favorite thing that we do. I can't stand making, because I'm an analyst and I should be happy about it, right? I should be happy about making a prediction. But it's, again, no one's played a game. I only have last year's data. And even given that, I don't think I picked Nobles to win that. I think I picked Sebs to win last year. So you have to go first. Who do you got winning? Let's go championship game. Who do you got in the championship game?
Okay. All right. So nothing too crazy yet. I'm going to pick my 2 finalists out of our top 5.
Okay.
But it's also going to be a reflection of how deep I think this top 5 is.
Yes.
All right. So you got Byrne last year. I'm not going to Byrne this year. I'm going to go with Sebs to win it over Thayer.
Wow.
Okay.
Okay.
A little different, but I think these 5 teams are all very, very good, and you know, we'll see how it plays out.
Wow. Enjoy those Bell Hill parent emails you're going to get. That's going to be fun for you. Just so everyone knows, that was Mike's prediction. I think for me, I don't want to be contrarian. I can't deny Thayer's talent. I got to put Thayer in there. I can't. And I love BD. I think he's going to do it. I think he's got, frankly, no excuse not to. It's a really good team.
Still a lot of obstacles in the course of a season coaching high school kids.
Well, trust me, I know.
Yeah.
We are on day 4 practice, and I am already having existential crises. So I understand that. It's more my belief in the ability to bring the talent together, because he's used to coaching high-level talent, and high level can be defined as, you know, a lot of people do that in terms of the actual level. Like they go pro, college, D1, high-level D1, high-level D3, low-level D1, all that stuff. I would say high expectation players are the best kind of players to coach. And I think this Thayer team has a lot of high expectation players. So that's my pick for the first team. And the second team, I don't want the emails. I'm going Bell Hill. And then Rowley can't get mad at me for having him ranked number 1, because I didn't even pick him to make it to the championship. So now he has extra fuel to motivate his players.
We're here to help.
Absolutely. These hands are for helping, man. We're just here to help you, right? So I think that's good. That's a good pull. So let's do surprise team.
Okay.
What team do you think is going to overachieve from where we have placed them?
All right, that's a great question, and I'm spinning around some candidates in my mind. And you know what? And I'm going to take Roxbury Latin.
Okay.
All right. I just think that's a team that's ready to take another step based on the talent that they have in defense, a second-year coach who, you know, has his system more ingrained to the players. Let's get it out there. They're a playoff team.
Wow. Okay. I think I kind of hinted at it already, but mine is middle size. I just, there's too much love for the game with that program. The way that coaches is strict and effective, and also a good defense. When you have a good defense, it's good to, and you know, it's cliche, but it's cliche for a reason. It's actually true a lot of the time. Let's do MVP. You want to do an MVP?
Why don't you take a stab at that? That's going to be.
It's not. It's traditionally a score, right?
Yep.
I mean, it's also us, you know, picking out of the ether. It's not like we give the award away. Who do I think? I think it's Pierce McDonald.
Yeah,
that's my pick.
Oh, very good player. Very good player.
Just too versatile. Sorry, like can score in so many ways. Can feed. Runs the channels so well. Like runs to the middle, gets past guys, gets guys in space. Like if you are going out to defend him, you better have a good approach, because if your approach is bad, he's gonna roast you. Like that's the kind of that's my pick, 100%. Backing it.
I'm staying at your school.
Okay.
And we touched on him earlier, and certainly a player maybe unlike anyone in the league who can take over a game. Mm-hmm. And that's Owen Umansky, face off from Govs, senior, going to Harvard. He was a player that just several coaches, mentioned as a game changer, just someone that can completely take over. And I think when you have a player like that on your side, if he's able to continue doing what he did last year, and he's basically done since we've started following him, 78% win rate last year.
Yeah.
That's a guy who's going to have his stamp all over the ISL this season.
Yeah, it's there's a couple terms that coaches use for guys like that. One of which I can't use on here. The other one I think is when you talk to coaches about guys that are really good, they'll be like, "That's a dude. That's a dude." Owen Umansky's a dude. Like he's a bad dude, and if you cross him, you're gonna hear about it too, which I enjoy. I like that. Anything else before we wrap this up?
Yeah, I'll just remind listeners that you can follow our coverage of this league and prep school lacrosse throughout New England. Every week at laxjournal.com. It's going to be robust. It's going to be insightful, inspiring, informative.
Got a lot of women's coverage coming up next week.
Yes, big week for the women's prep coverage. Yep, and then we transition into high school from there, and keep it here.
Man. Oh, I know what I wanted to pitch before we go, because it'll make everyone mad. What do you think about preseason or postseason preps plus Catholic Conference, seeded cup style, soccer style,
commingling our power rankings?
Let's bring them all in. Let's bring them all in and do like a cup style tournament. And teams can, it's kind of like, some of the any West teams go and play in their little the Geico Championship and things like that.
The Prep Nationals, yeah.
Prep Nationals. We could do that and just bring in, some of those top teams in the Catholic League. What do you think?
Something to think about.
It'd be fun. Let's pitch that to Mr. Seamans,
to the boss.
The podcast. Let's do that, and that's a good place to end it. Thanks again for listening to New England Lacrosse Journal's Chasing the Goal podcast. For Jack Piatelli, who had better things to do, I'm Kyle Devitte. We'll see you next time.